My experimental class, I will include the MP40. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of it. I like it on floor loot when you first land. But overall, one thing that makes this super easy is a lot of people have it leveled, so they do really like the MP40, but it is outshined by a few other weapons. Overall, still pretty good. If you have it leveled, this is what I would use if I didn't really have much leveled. Recoil booster, the short barrel, slate reflector, the folding, momentum quick, taped, subsonic, 45 round, and the skeletal. And most of the Vanguard weapons are subsonic. There are issues if you go to Iron Trials where the hollow point is definitely necessary because it will impact the TTK in terms of consistency. So keep that in mind. Most will be subsonic because of the way they've nerfed the damage values. The other one that a lot of people gas up, I have tried it multiple times on Caldera, Rebirth Island, Fortune's Keep. I think it definitely fits more in the smaller maps. Good as a sniper support, but the biggest problem is still the damage per mag. We got MX Silencer, the Sniper Barrel, the 2.5x Empress Notch Perfectionist, fully loaded with polymer, lengthened, 60 round, and the strife angled. And this one's more to just kind of tone in that recoil. We're not using anything with the initial recoil and then the sustained recoil. So we're basically only focused on recoil and sustained. And this thing does shoot pretty good. It's just the problem is that these 60 bullets instantly out of your mag, and then that's it. You got to reload type thing. So overall, pretty cool build. I think Serpentine is still kind of transitioned to being the meta, although on paper it should only really change the shots to kill by 1 in most scenarios. Where you really notice this is if you're using an SMG beyond that 15 meters range, because those damage values are so low in the teens, you are adding 2 and sometimes maybe even 3 shots to kill. So that is very powerful when you're kind of rounding around a corner and it's that 15 meters range. So it's just something to be aware of. Serpentine is really popular for that. If you're at range, it's really only adding 1 shot to kill, despite how it feels sometimes, because Stim will throw that off. And then Amped, you can go with Amped or you can go with Combat Scout, which is generally the go-to unless you're using slow swap weapons like a sniper rifle or an LMG. Then it's kind of like you have to go Amped, and there you go. So you can use throwing knife, Semtex, Stim shot, nade, whatever. That's kind of the main go-to. Then we have a couple regain classes. If you're coming back from the gulag or you're coming back late in the game on Rebirth, you need to get the loadout, but you still want to stay off the minimap. Ghost is there if you want to use a restock to kind of hold yourself up, or maybe swap that out for nades. You can definitely do that. And both of them are pretty much the same. The only difference here is that one perk and the lethal. So overall, the class for that is going to be the Amp, which is kind of the best close range. Obviously, there's a 1911, which is pretty gross. That one's just way above most people's skill level. And this one's super easy enough to win the one gun fight and then pick up whatever close range gun or loot around for a quote unquote meta option, right? We got Agency, Task Force, Ember Sighting, 30 round fast, and the Serpent. And then for the long range, we're going with the KG, which is pretty much a meta option. That's kind of the most popular that a lot of people are going with. And that's because it has no recoil. And the MX Silencer is shrouded 3 to 6X or the 2.5 if you're on the smaller maps. Padded, brace, fully loaded, hatch, 60 round, lengthened, and then strife angled. And that's kind of how you would build that out. And that's going to be both of those. Honorable mention, I think these are still pretty good, especially if you're using them on a smaller map. You could get away with the PKM probably on the bigger map because of how damaging it is, but it can be a little tricky to spot people when the VLK just doesn't zoom in nearly as much as the 6X. So here we got this MP5 huge buff recently that made it so that it just way more viable in those close range engagements, and it feels a lot of fun, especially with the movement, especially if you're a fan of the MP5. We got Agency, no barrel, use a blueprint of any kind, and pretty much this will give you cleaner iron sights. Raider stock, Serpent, 50 round, and then the Bruiser. This is pretty much a good movement. ADS and damage per mag is fairly solid. And then we got the PKM, which it's kind of like one of those things where I kind of try to rotate certain weapons off the list and on the list. It's not like really they're going anywhere. This one has been top tier viable since the start of Warzone. It's never really gone out of the top tier of viable. So it's kind of one of those things. I only have so many slots. I try to incorporate stuff so you can kind of experiment if you get bored with stuff. Because if you're like me, you might even have 3 or 4 different builds for one individual weapon just to even keep that fresh, because it does get boring using meta, and that's it, and you never variation from that. At least for me it is. If it's not for you, cool, more power to you, enjoy that. But PKM is one of those nasty guns that's always been nasty, and if you haven't tried it in a while, this thing does delete and will surprise you and your enemy. So we got monolithic extended barrel attack laser 3x with the snatch grip, and that's kind of the overall build there. Then we are including a sniper build here. People kind of lean towards the 3-line rifle because it does have a really nasty one headshot potential and even a chest shot in some ranges. They did fix it so it doesn't one-shot in Iron Trials, so there's nothing that one-shots there, but it's still a pretty solid option. I'm not a fan of Vanguard snipers or the current snipers at all. Obviously the Kar 98 with the aim assist, the rotational made it super easy to use, but that's been gone for a while. So this is kind of like the next best thing if you like sniping. So we got Mercury, this R1MN, we got the variable of 4 to 8, or you can use the default. The problem with the 4 to 8 is you can't really hold your breath on a controller. And then we got the Zach custom here. We got silent focus, which helps with sway on hand for the better aim down sight. Polymer works different for snipers. This one will help your aim down sight speed. You can see right here, and flinch resistance. And we got the 20 round mag, which is the one that's the best. And then we got lengthen, and then the heavy foregrip, which will help with that idle sway and reduce all the recoil, so you'll be able to get back on target. Pretty much the best build there. And then we're using pretty much the best sniper support option currently. It used to be the AK-47 for the longest time from Cold War, and now it is the Volk version. And this one's pretty much built out for close range. We got recoil booster, the Kravsnik 428mm, slate reflector, the Reisdorf Perfectionist on-hand taped, subsonic 45 round mag, and the skeletal stock. And that's pretty much kind of how that burns out. The biggest problem with this one is damage per mag. So that is really one of the problems with sniping currently in the game, is you got to pair it with a weapon. And this is probably the best option. And the problem is the damage per mag. You're good for probably like duos, and you get in kind of a really tricky spot, especially if you're not playing really close to your team. It can be rough, but overall, this gun does delete up to about 30 meters. You're going to be deleting SMGs very, very well, especially beyond that 12-ish meters, where a lot of SMGs start to struggle. And that brings us to our next set of weapons, which I have been really popular for the longest, but as we get up, the weapons start to have less and less deficiencies. Currently, if you go with the Type 100, it is always deleted. It will always win a 1v1 in the close range, especially if you have a full mag. Biggest problem is you have to reload often. You can get caught reloading. If you're trying to chase someone, you kind of put yourself in a deficit. But it's a great weapon. If you can time your reloads appropriately, you can delete. So we got recoil booster, the rapid, slate reflector, folding with the sleight of hand, obviously for the reload, quick leather grip, subsonic, and then the compact for the better strafe speed. And then we're going to combine that with the Cooper, which is also another good sniper support. I think it's kind of like almost tied right there with the Volk, but I think the Volk is a little bit more consistent and easier to use at close range in terms of ADS mobility. This one does have a really fast fire rate, and it does burn through bullets. And this one's more of a long range build that I prefer to use on the smaller maps. I think on Caldera it's very usable. You just got to know your strengths and weaknesses. Once people get to beyond about 100 meters, it gets a little bit tricky on the ammo. It's good for a one person, but you got to get to cover, reload. It has a little bit of a slow reload animation that you got to worry about. But if you're comfortable with that, rock it, right? So we got MX Silencer, Cooper Custom 3 to 6X or the 2.5. Custom padded with tight grip, on hand polymer lengthened 60 round with the Carver foregrip, or you can go ahead and use hand stop. Those ones more of a preference. I've used both. I like both. I think they're both good. Just matter again of preference. And that brings us into these other options, and most of these are going to be good for titanium trials as well as regular Caldera, and also for rebirth, because they're obviously getting into the upper echelon of top tier viable and the meta. So for this one, you got the UMG. Overall, still same build. We got MX Silencer, the Bernard barrel 3 to 6X, the Mercier WT with tight grip, on hand, hatch, 125 round mag with the lengthen and strife angle. And basically that build is mostly sustained fire. And then we got the Sten, which is pretty dominant at every category: mobility, recoil, aim down sight, damage per mag, blah, 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 clean iron sight, whatever you want, it is good at, except for one blatant flaw. And this was what stops most people from using it. If you can get over it, it blocks up your screen when you sprint, because it has this big old thing on it that kind of blocks your screen every single time, which is unfortunate. But if you see somebody, you shoot them, you will win gunfights with the Sten. It doesn't really have any other flaws other than it blocks half your screen, which is kind of a big flaw when it comes to first-person shooters, where you need to see the target, especially with these fast TTKs. We got recoil booster, rapid, slate reflector, Gawain's custom, acrobatic, quick, taped, lengthened 50 round drum with the skeletal. That brings us to kind of the top 3. I think that the Blixen is still pretty good. I think it's been edged out by the Marco and the Arma. But it's still pretty good. It's like splitting hairs at this point. It's still pretty good. I think there's scenarios where you might need to use hollow point a little bit more urgently now because the way they've changed the damage profile. So overall, I would recommend it in this particular case. You could do recoil booster, the Bergstrom, Slate Reflector, Bergstrom, stock, and then we got fleet, quick, taped, hollow point 54 round with the skeletal. I think the really big change here is you could go subsonic, but you will have to be a little bit more accurate, which depending on your skill level, that's kind of what's really separated the Blixen, because if you miss, it does have the slower fire rate out of the other 2 meta SMGs, as you would say. When it comes to Caldera and the other modes with regular health that we have right now, the Automaton is back to being as nasty as ever, right? In Titanium Trials, I would not necessarily use it because the TTK gets way too long and the damage per mag, you just burn through bullets because 75 and they hit like peanuts, and if people have, I don't know, it just is not great. But for the regular map, it works perfectly. It's just kind of how the TTK values change based off of that. So we still got the same build: MX Silencer, the ZAC 600, 3D6X, Anastasia padded, tight grip, on-hand polymer, lengthened, Sakura 75 with hand stop. And that's kind of the general build we've had for quite a while. And that's going to get us into the meta chaser category. And I think really the differentiator is going to be at what skill level you are. The SMG are pretty much interchangeable, and there's multiple loadouts. I'm going to go over the ones I like and have used. We have the Arma, which is interchangeable with the Marco, as we'll see. So that doesn't mean that this is the absolute best or the other ones. It's, like I said, interchangeable, especially based off skill level and play style. But both are definitely in the meta chaser category. So we got the Arma here, and we got the recoil booster, the precision barrel. We got slate reflector, the skeletal, sleight of hand, quick, taped, 60 round, subsonic, and then skeletal. You could also go ahead and run this with hollow point, which helps the limbs, and you can go vital with the 72 round mag. So it's like there's 4 different variations of stuff you can do there. This will give you very reliable TTKs, but it does move a lot slower than the 60 and with these other attachments that you'd have set up, depending on what ranges you're going to use. So you kind of got to go with what makes the most sense for you, whether you want better aim, stability, whatever. This is a pretty good build overall. Or you could even go with the third barrel or the short one if you want the mobility. I mean, it goes on and on with the Arma. And I kind of given you a few different options. These are all pretty good. The ones that I've stopped on, they're all pretty good builds. It's just a matter of what you're comfortable with using and how you want to play. Keep in mind that if you use any of these SMGs in Titanium Trials, I recommend using hollow point because you want the consistency of TTKs, which happens with hollow point, especially with that extra 100 health, and serpentine, which can also impact your gunplay. Then we got the STG, which kind of slipped in. This gun has as good a TTK, better mobility, faster reload than the KG M40, which is an absolute laser, which requires absolutely 0 skill and anyone can use, right? So you kind of got to pick where you're at and what consistency level you're going to be playing at, right? So this one is the MX Silencer, the VDD 760, 3D6X, weighted, sleight of hand so you get better, faster reload. You could pretty much choose anything you want for that one, but generally sleight of hand's good, especially if you're playing Titanium Trials. And we got hatch, 50 round, lengthen, and then the hand stop. And that's going to bring us into the absolute meta chasers, which is the Marco. I think, like I said, is pretty much interchangeable there, especially after multiple nerfs to everything. Marco movement build is still a lot of fun to use. Doesn't have a lot of recoil, especially for those first 25-ish shots. And then it kind of makes a hook to the right. But if you release the trigger, go back, it just continues that same vertical recoil pattern with a slight angle to it, which is super negligible to almost no effort to control. We got recoil booster, the Perfetto Lesto, Slate Reflector, Emerito FR, momentum, quick, tape grip, subsonic, 64, and then skeletal. This is the base one I would use, and then you would switch to hollow point if you're going to be playing the Titanium Trials. Overall, KGM40 has been very dominant, and not because it shoots all these hard-hitting bullets. A lot of people are like, it shoots marshmallows. Yes, but it's the straightest shooting marshmallow gun in the game currently, and that's kind of made it where it doesn't feel like you get instantly deleted, but most people aren't going to be missing those shots, and that's where you get comparisons at certain ranges. Other guns that have a little bit more recoil, you can still hit the target because they're fairly big. you're going to have faster TTKs, but this one has reliable TTKs up to 200 plus meters, where you're still going to be able to hit the shots because of that 3x zoom. And that's just kind of how it goes. And the build for that is the MX silencer, shrouded, 3d6, padded, brace, fully loaded, hatch grip, 60 round drum, lengthened, and stripe angled. Obviously, there's so many different weapons in the game that are viable right now, especially on the smaller map. So enjoy what you enjoy using, even if it's Fin LMG. Enjoy, right? That's what it is. The Kilo, the M13. Who cares as long as you enjoy the game and are having fun with it. Appreciate all the support on the content. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't, new around here. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.